one of the mistakes, I think, of the ideology of the 1960s, of which we're all now the descendants, is that because it was rooted so much in a reaction against traditionalism of all kinds, and in particular a reaction against Christianity, and of course Christianity, and indeed all other religious traditions, hold sex to have a very important status, to have a sacred status within marriage and so on. When you have an intellectual movement which is all about reaction against Christianity and a rejection of everything that's come before, which to some extent is maybe not a surprise that would have come out of the Second World War. That kind of enormous reaction against everything that had come before, a sort of complete loss of faith in tradition and culture to date. That does include a reaction against the idea of sex having a sacred status, or sex even having a special status, a unique status of any kind. So I describe this in my book as sexual disenchantment. So feeding off of Max Weber's idea of disenchantment as a process of, as a component of the Enlightenment, where previously people felt that the natural world had a kind of special, sacred, almost conscious status. And that's all stripped away as part of the scientific revolution, and people come to believe that it's inert and just subject to rational forces and so on. I think sexual disenchantment is the same sort of process, that people used to believe that sex was sacred, was special. And what the new ideology, post-sexual revolution, tells us is, oh no, it's just a social interaction. You can buy it, you can sell it, you can treat it as meaningless. If you want to attach special status to it, then fine, whatever. People can still get married, people can still choose to behave in traditional ways. But the fundamental idea is that actually sex is not really any different from shaking someone's hand, playing tennis, making a coffee for someone, that it has a completely neutral status. People, of course, don't actually act as if that's true.
I was going to say.
Yeah. No one actually behaves as if that's true.
And yet
yeah,
we're a sex-obsessed society in some ways.
Yeah. So the theory is, from the sort of hyper-progressive position, is that, sex can be commodified, porn is just another kind of entertainment, all this kind of stuff. But then no one actually behaves as if that's true. People care if their spouse cheats on them. People care if their boss is sexually inappropriate to them. It's this funny component of Me Too, where on the one hand you have enormous distress at sexual inappropriateness in various circumstances, including particularly in the workplace. So, I, as a journalist, this is obviously something that's been a big deal in journalism. I know a lot of female journalists who, on the one hand, will be enormously upset at, say, inappropriate touching, or being asked out on a date by a senior colleague, all this kind of stuff, which is felt to be completely inappropriate because sex should be outside of the professional realm, But then on the one hand, support the decriminalisation of the sex industry, and would say that sex work, so-called, I don't use that phrase, but would say that sex work is just the same as any other kind of work, and that we shouldn't be stigmatising pornography or whatever. And I'm like, come on. So sexual touching in your workplace, that's beyond the pale. But actually having a whole industry which is entirely based on sex, which is, where the buying and selling of sex is the point of the industry. I think what on earth does sexual harassment look like in a brothel? How can you have these? And I think what's going on there is people are trying to hold to the idea of sexual disenchantment in an intellectual way, but actually it's not true. People feel very strongly, instinctively, that sex does have a special status, even if they try and deny it to themselves. And I think that this whole effort to try and pretend otherwise has been an enormous mistake.